Well, that was kind of a rickety start there because we were trying to do something at the very last minute, and the slide didn't come up as soon as it should. But this is the OhioRAAM Show coming to you again from Southwest Ohio, where we are sponsors by the two time stations in Ohio, the first one being Oxford, Ohio. And I'm going to flip a picture up here of Lisa Brunkhorst, who's sitting over there in Oxford, who has a video, but we haven't worked out her audio yet. She's going to be on the show in a couple of days or later, the new team she has. But we try to point out somebody who's special in these two time stations every week, and Lisa's one of them. They're from Oxford. She's a real spark plug and one of the reasons why Oxford works. And thank you, Lisa. And just give us a wave. We can't hear you, but give us a wave. And we want to just say that we're going to go down to Georgia with Erik Newsholme and his lovely crew chief there in just a little bit here. But we just want to say that there's some new things happening. Those of you who get your RAM newsletter just saw it come out, and there's a lot of information in that. If you haven't, you ought to be sure to sign up for that and get information on some of the seminars that are coming up, what have you. My name's Lee Kreider. I'm hosting the show, and I want to show you something here. You see, this is a binder that involves, I can show it to you, the people that I'm working with, each one of these tabs, to be on future shows. And I just thought about, do you remember in the last presidential election when candidate Romney at one of the, if I get the laughing here, just you people just visit him yourself. You remember he said that he had binders full of women? I'm sorry. Well, I got binders full of cyclists here. People that we're working with future shows with, and so we'll be seeing some of those later on. One of my things, I sometimes get a laughing jag and I can't get stopped, so I'm going to have you help me out. We're going down here to talk to Erik Newsholme and his crew chief, Beverly, who I believe he's married to.
Yes, I am.
Okay, very good. And you're going to be riding solo in the RAM 2015 in the 50-59 category. Is that not right?
Yes, sir. We got qualified in August, and we registered the last day for the early registration, and so we put our name in the hat, and we're going to go for it next year.
I'm trying not to. You know, it's not that funny, but sometimes I just get caught. You know, I've had to walk out of theaters because I was laughing so hard and so long that it got to be embarrassing, and I just had to leave. It's one of my failings. Okay, well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are the Newsholmes, and what's life like for you outside of the world of cycling?
Well, we're Erik and Beverly. We met in Daytona Beach back in 1987. Just out of happenstance, we stayed at the same hotel for the whole week, and we met the last night there, and we've been together basically ever since. We went back to the same hotel and 22 years ago, and we got engaged there at Perry's Oceanside Edge. And then weekend before last was the Daytona Florida RAM Challenge, which is a cross-state race. And so when I elected to do RAM, the only person I could see to be my crew chief was my best friend and my wife, and who's been by my side for many years. And so I just handed over everything as far as logistics and taking care of everything. And so she said, "We're going to Daytona, and we're going to Perry's." And so we stayed at the same hotel where we met and we got engaged at. And subsequently, I got my first ultra endurance win at. Other than that, from myself, I'm from originally from Miami, but I've been in Atlanta, Georgia for most of my life. Done a lot of odd job things here and there, career-wise. More of the common sense, and Beverly is more of the book sense. So we make a really good pair. In the beginning of this year, I just decided to change my life completely and left a family business and dedicated myself full-time to taking on the toughest endurance race in the world and going full-time and preparing myself for the race across America.
Well, you mentioned the RAAM Challenge, and I was following that pretty close as it was going on because I know that Lisa was as well, because she was watching a good friend of ours, Patty George,
right,
who did okay as well, did she not?
I think she did pretty good herself.
And she set the women's record for the 400 mile. I have it jotted down here, 27 hours and 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And you set the record for the men's 400, did you not?
Yes, I did. It was unexpected. We didn't set out to do anything other than get the experience of the race, and for me and the crew. And just so happens that the crew melded together pretty quickly and got good experience, and I had a good day on the bike, and we came out on top. And then when we got finished, Fred Bothling came up to me and the second place gentleman, who came in not long after me, and he asked us if we were under the age 50, and we said yes, and he said, well, both of you set the course record. I just happened to be a little bit quicker than the second place gentleman.
Well, the weather wasn't that good, was it?
No, it was predicted to be pretty windy and chilly. It started out probably about 40 degrees and 15-mile-an-hour winds, and it was as predicted. It picked up all during the day, and so when we got over to the Pine Island Inlet on the west coast of Florida, we were easily doing 25 miles an hour in wide open spaces, and we just put our head down and did the best we could. Everybody was exposed to it, so it wasn't like I was the only one out there in the wind. But my crew, they were in a nice vehicle and with the windows up and everything. But when they would get out, they would feel it, and they were kind of shocked that I was out there, pedaling away. And but we had a good day, and it was really, all things considered, and the goals that we had set for the race, we exceeded all those goals, and came up with a couple of extra prizes at the end, which was really nice to be able to do that.
That's when you go start out like that and didn't expect to win, much less set a course record, that's got to be pretty satisfying. You said you qualified in August. Where did you qualify at?
I chose the Mid-Atlantic 24-hour time trial in Washington, North Carolina. Beverly has family in Wilmington, which is just south of there. And so my brother-in-law and sister-in-law came up, and they ended up being some crew members. So we had a crew of 3. It was a 26-mile loop course, and we were able to qualify at 416 miles in under the 24 hours time allotted. And so we achieved our goals there as well. And that was the last day of early registration for the race across America, and my crew chief wouldn't let me register until we qualified, so I had that big motivator out there to get it taken care of.
I guess that's kind of a smart thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You want to plunk down $3,000 and then not be
able. That's right. So
we talk about, you pay $3,000 and you get a number.
Right.
And what's your number going to be?
I haven't seen the number yet. I've checked the website a couple times.
They haven't given you one yet. Well, that
hasn't been assigned yet. But
I've had people tell me that once you get that number and you start driving around town or other places, you'll see it pop up on signs and everything else.
Right.
It becomes very important to you. Okay.
Oh, the good thing they did bringing back the allotting the solo numbers the number for life. And
Yeah, they did away with that for a little while, and I guess I don't know why, but I think that's kind of a nice thing, that that number is known. I mean, everybody that's been around at any time at all knows 383, which is Dex's number, and
yeah.
a few others like that. But so Beverly, tell me about your crew. Is it pretty well fleshed out? You got it looking good at this point? Or are you still working on crew members?
Still working on crew members. It's better than I expected. We're shooting for a goal of 9 people, and we have 6 definite, 2 and 3 possibles. So it's coming along nicely.
And speaking of Dex, have you taken a look at his book and that wonderful appendix at the back, which tells you so much good information about?
Well, when I made my decision to do RAM in January, I decided to find every publication I could find about RAM, and Dex's book was one of the ones that came up, so I read it, and then subsequently I got to meet Dex this year in Race Across America because I was a crew chief for a 4-person team that was successful, and I met Dex and Joni in I think it was in West Virginia.
Yeah. What team were you crewing for?
I was crewing for Bert's Big Adventure, a 4-person mixed team out of Atlanta.
Okay.
And we had the team of 4 with 13 crew members. So I brought 17 people all together. Started out of Oceanside and brought them to Annapolis, and they're still speaking at the end. We're at the end of the race.
Well, you know that doesn't always happen.
I'm very well aware of that. Yes.
They used to put a lot more information out about why people had DNF'd or fines and what have you than they do now, and I suppose there's good reason for keeping some of that quiet. But I remember a few years ago, somebody, the solo rider, he DNF'd somewhere. It's quite a ways out west, and the reason was it said crew went home.
I heard that story.
Yeah, we had heard that story where the guy got abandoned out west, and what are you supposed to do?
And the funny thing about that, or I guess it wouldn't have been funny if you were out there, but the thing broke down between him and his wife.
Right.
She was driving the follow vehicle, and he wasn't happy. I guess she might have even bumped him or something. But
yeah, I heard that too.
So the crew went home. So yeah, I've heard a few stories about crews that fell apart, and I think one of the things that Johnny puts out and makes a mention of in the book, and she's been on the show. They've been on the show a couple times. Is she's as crew chief? She said her #1 job was to look after the crew.
Right.
And she said the rider can take care of themselves, but that's not quite true. But yeah, that crew happiness and crew satisfaction is a very, very important thing.
Well, I told the team of riders this year that I would be much harder on the riders than I would be on the crew, because if the crew wasn't happy, the whole thing's going to fall apart, and the riders weren't going to go anywhere. And there were a couple of times where I had to step in and stop a few situations where I saw that the crew was being I don't know, I would say that the riders were hassling my crew members a little bit, and I put a stop to it. So I mean, that's going to happen over the course of 8 days. Yeah,
and to live in those tight confines of a couple or 3 vehicles, and have 8 or 9, 10 people trying to get along together, it's a pressure cooker.
It is, but what I learned is that when all those negative little sniping situations come up is if you don't feed into those negative situations and you stop them and just squelch those fires immediately and come back to what the team's goals are. And that's the most important thing that I've learned through this whole thing is to develop a set of goals and you stick with them. And when you keep bringing the people back to what those goals are, then individual situations become second place when you keep coming back to what the team's goals are. And that's what I kept doing with the Bert's Big Adventure riders and crew this year. And that's one of the things that helped make them a successful finish for the 2014 Race Across America.
Well, speaking of that, Mark and pardon me, I did it, didn't I? Erik and Beverly, what are your goals?
First and foremost is to officially finish the race.
Safely.
Safely. Beyond that, I have 12 days as a solo rider to complete the race. But I'm going to be a little more adventurous, and I'm going to say my personal goal is a goal of 10 days to finish, which gives me a 2-day buffer to play with, depending on what Mother Nature is going to throw at you and what the race is going to throw at you. And anybody who's been involved with the Race Across America knows that the race is not if something else happens unexpectedly, but when it happens.
When it happens and what it is, yep.
And how you adjust to that.
You just
You never know. I mean, this year I experienced a couple of things, and we mitigated those situations and moved on. And so the same thing will happen for us next year, I'm sure. So we will get as much information as we can and be as prepared as we can, and then when something happens, we'll deal with it and move on. Some other goals I have are I'll be an American and a rookie in the race, and I'll be in the 50-59 age category, and you never can tell what's going to happen.
Well, you sure got a good start there. I mean, your record so far, of course, riding 400 miles is a lot different than riding 3,000.
That's true, but I never, before that, I'd never done anything more than 200 miles.
Exactly. It's just like all you have to do, Erik, is just do that about 7 or 8 times, and you got it made.
Got it. Well, our theory is if we put a good, cohesive crew together that can do the jobs that need to be done and get the amount of rest that the crew needs, that they can take care of me, then as Fred Brodling said in Daytona, all I have to do is pedal the bike.
And another thing Fred says in his wisdom is you don't eat an elephant all at once.
Exactly right.
You eat it one bite at a time. And back to the crew thing, I really wish we had Lisa's mic working, but we'll work on that a little bit later. She and I have watched, from the time station perspective, a lot of crews come through. And there are crews who know exactly what they're doing when they get there, particularly team crews.
Right.
And there are others who seem to have to, at each time station, discuss what they're going to do.
Right.
And that makes an awful lot of difference.
Having the experience that I had this year of being the crew chief for this, while I had read as much as I could read and had watched the Bicycle of Dreams movie and everything, actually being in the race and seeing it firsthand is an invaluable education. And Beverly was at the finish line when we came across. She was there the whole weekend, so she got to experience a lot of the finishers and the solo finishers and picked up a lot of information that way.
Yeah. Well, just let me interrupt here to do a little commercial, if you will, to talk about some websites you're going to find on our website. But the OhioRAAM.org, that's the website for our time stations here in Ohio. The RaceAcrossAmerica.org is the official site of the Race Across America, where you'll be able to follow the race more closely. And when we get closer, we'll be talking more about that. But sometimes we don't let people know exactly what we're talking about or when we're talking about. The race takes place in June, and the solo racers start on June the 16th this year. I believe that's a Tuesday. And they have 12 days to finish. The women have just a little bit longer, a few extra hours. And the teams start on the 20th of June, and they have 8 days to finish. So you're looking at around June the 28th when the race will be wrapped up. Now, there'll be some people to be in several days before that, as we found out this last year. But that's all in that kind of information. It'll be there at raceacrossamerica.org. And if you're in the Midwest, a good place to watch the race is at one of our 2 time stations here at Oxford or Blanchester, Ohio. Just come and find the McDonald's store. Everybody in town knows where that's at, and you'll see the time station there, day or night, 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There'll be somebody there to greet you and explain to you. If you're a fan and just getting interested in the race, they can explain to you what's going on, what's happening at that moment, what the standings are, all that kind of information. And if you're a rider or crew member, we're there to help you around the clock. We have 24-hour food, fuel, and more important than that is 24-hour fans. And since Lisa there is going to be racing this year, you won't see her probably, but you'll often see her out there with her cowbell ringing it, and we enjoy that. Lisa, you do such a wonderful job, and we're going to miss you this year, but we know this is a great adventure for you. UltraRaceNews.com, that's John Foot's e-magazine. Everything you could possibly want to know about ultra racing you'll find there at that website. Not only stories about races, what has happened, but what's going to happen, information about nutrition, equipment, training, a question and answer feature. That's just one great site, ultraracenews.com. Don't have to remember any of those, because all you have to remember is this one website, OhioRAAMShow.com, and you'll find links to all of those there. So tell me a little about your training, Mark. I don't. Eric, there's a mental reason why this happens, Lisa, and I told them before the show I was going to try not to let that happen, but it just keeps slipping out. There's another problem here. It's called age, but we won't get into that.
Okay.
Eric, tell me about your training program.
Well, since 2010, I got into group riding in the Atlanta area, and I've been chasing some of the fastest people in the Atlanta area for the last 4.5 years. And so my training volume has been in between around the 9,000 mile mark annually for up until this year. My introduction to the ultra endurance race riding happened when my friends Danny Grable and Casey Darden from the Power Pels and Ponytails team from the 2013 RAAM. That's how I found out about all this. And when they started telling me what they're doing and their training and what they're racing, and because I really didn't know anything about the Race Across America until I met them, I was really drawn into it and started training around with them, going to some rides with them. And so last year I was just really infatuated with the Race Across America. And then when I made my decision to do the race, I just started increasing my volume of training, along with keeping with the very fast group rides that I do. So I intermix speed work with endurance to prepare me for the long distance rides. And so far, the training model has worked, because it's gotten me qualified. And I won at the qualifier. I won my age group as well, and then I won Daytona and set the course record. Off the bike, my nutrition has changed, and I do a lot of resistance training and core work to make the body strong to put up with the rigors of what the race is going to throw at me. So it's an all-inclusive training program, not just bicycle related, but it's off the bike as well. And one of the things I learned from Dex's book is not to be focused on having one particular item as far as drink or food or anything like that. So I'm focusing on a lot of variety, just in case something runs out, that I'm not. It's not a showstopper for me, that I can keep on going. So I have a lot of flexibility. Beverly, at the first qualifier, when she was giving me new bottles, she was choosing the flavors. I had nothing to do with it. All I was I was taking it, and she was making the food and just giving it to me, and whatever she was making, I was taking. And so all I concentrate on is pedaling the bike, and I'm trying to let my crew chief take care of all the rest of it for me. And it's a formula that's, we've been together for a very long period of time. We trust each other. We're each other's best friends. And I know that she's going to have my back for the race. And so I trust her implicitly. And that's one of the most important things you can do in this race, is to have the total trust and confidence of your crew chief and your crew to be able to take care of all the facets needed besides pedaling the bike, which I'll be taking that on.
And Erik, what concerns you the most about this? What part of the ride, or what aspect of it, when you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, do you think about and say, I wonder how I'm going to handle that?
Again, I was able to see the entire race this year from the crew chief's perspective, but in a lot of situations, I actually had to put myself as in the rider's mentality to help out the riders that I had. And to be honest, there wasn't really anything in the race that scared me. We have really hot summers here in Atlanta. They're humid, which is different than the desert, but I realized that the desert isn't really that long of a period of time. The mountains of Colorado don't scare me. I've been higher than Wolf Creek Pass in Colorado, and I realized that in actuality there's only 3 big peaks in Colorado, and you're done with Colorado. The boredom of Kansas is something to be concerned with, because it's just so flat and so long, and there's no trees till about halfway through the state. This year on the race, I had to really change up my tactics to deal with the boredom for both the racers and the crew. Because when you're in Kansas, and especially you have a tailwind, there's not much to do for the crew, because the riders are just having a big time out there riding, and they're not swapping as much as they would. And for me, hopefully I have a tailwind and I can just race across Kansas and I'll be fine. West Virginia will be interesting. There's a lot of little pitfalls there. But the beauty of the country, I think, can take over some of the things that seem to scare most people about the race. And I mean, what better way to see the country than at 15 miles an hour?
Well, I'm not a racer. I'm strictly a tourist, and I've done a lot of touring. I love it. And people have asked me, well, how do you get across the Rocky Mountains? I says, hey, the Rockies aren't any trouble. Let's talk about West Virginia.
Exactly.
That's the one that is so morally defeating. Not only does it come toward the end of your tour, but the climbs there are just murderous, is the only word for it. They're just absolutely murderous. And like you say, there's 3 big climbs in Colorado. You get to the top of one of those passes, and your work for that period of time is over with. From there on, it's Johnny bar the door,
Right.
But in West Virginia, you get to the top of one, and often you'll look up ahead and say, wait a minute, I see 4 more ahead.
Yep.
I'm going to have to do in short order. But and there's been more than one rider that have gotten close
And yes, and come apart just before West Virginia.
In West Virginia.
Somewhere,
A lot of times medical problems, but other times just it can just be defeating. So, what about you, Beverly? Anything that you think about when you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning that you're going to have to do and get ready for and make sure you have?
Yes, sir. The one answer I have is sleep deprivation. That's what concerns me the most. And when he came to me in January and told me he wanted to do this race, I told him that I was all for it, but he had to agree to go down and sleep for hopefully a reasonable amount of time. And when I was at the finish line this year watching the solo riders come in, the common theme of the folks who successfully finished was that they slept several hours a day. So the sleep deprivation is my primary concern.
Okay, very good. Well, we wish you folks well. We'll be looking for you. I might not be the person there to see you, but there'll be a lot of good people that staff our 2 time stations, and we're at a place where a lot of people need a little moral boost to get themselves ready for that last set of mountains that are ahead of them, and we try to do that for you, and we'll be looking forward to giving you that boost. And we wish you well, and be safe, and take care. Before we go, anything that we've not asked or anything you'd like to say? Beverly?
We're looking forward to the journey.
That's good. And how about you, Erik?
Well, to go back to your point, what you said about what Fred said about biting off the whole elephant. This year, I maintained, simple little goals of the next time station, the next mountain, the next river, whatever it is. I learned not to look at the race of its entirety, but to look at each state, each community, as a simple little goal. Yuri Robic called RAM is war. And in war, there are little battles. And each time you win a little battle, it gets you closer to winning the war. So I will keep my eye kind of glimmering at the end of the war, which is Annapolis, Maryland. But my focus will be on each one of those individual battles, and the safety and security of my crew is first and foremost. The race doesn't matter if something happens to somebody on our crew or myself. So that's the most important part, and we want to have a good time and enjoy ourselves, and just really enjoy the beauty of this country and what this race is all about. I would tell people along the way, I said, the racers in RAM are the true 1%ers of life, because these are the seekers of life, and they're the ones who are really going for something they really want. And I really learned that this year on RAM, and I'll be doing the same thing next year.
Well, I would let Lisa have some final thoughts there, but her mic isn't working yet. So just give us a wave, Lisa. You're going to hear more about her and her team in another week or so. So we want to thank all of you for being with us, taking time out to join us. We enjoy having you. And just want to say that if you go to our show website, we appreciate it, OhioRAAMShow.com. There's a couple things you can do there, not only the links I mentioned earlier in the show, but if you would like to have notifications of coming shows, you can put your email address in there. It won't go anywhere else but to us. Also, if you've got any comments, there's a place where you can put comments, suggestions. Every once in a while somebody leaves something there, and I always appreciate that. Other things you can do to promote ultra cycling and the race across America is on your social media. When you see it pop up, give it a like, give it a share, give it a plus, whatever. If you're on Twitter, give it a retweet. That helps the show, of course, but it helps get the word out about what's going on here. Now, that's the problem. One of the biggest problems with ultra racing and the Ohio and the race across America is so few people know about it. And when they find out about it, they often get interested, and that's really what we're trying to do here. We appreciate everything, everyone who watches the show. We appreciate the support we get from so many people, And I enjoy it when I go to one of the races and people start talking to me and tell me that they've been watching and they appreciate it, and that is a great help as well. So thank all of you for being with us. Thank the Newsholmes again for being with us. Thank Lisa for staying in there. We're going to try to help get our mic's problem solved once we get off the air here. Thank you all, and good evening, good day, good morning, wherever you are when you watch this. We'll be seeing you again next week with another guest. Bye-bye.